Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Film and In Between. As you heard, we are a podcast where we are just a group of filmmakers, and we're going to be having lots of guests where we're just passionate about filmmaking. We're passionate about faith and all the subjects where those things, those cross sections meet. And so this is our first episode. We're really excited about this. It's something that we've been thinking about and planning about for a while. And so we're going to take this first episode to let you get to know us and kind of the vision for this going forward. And so my name is George Coletrain, and I'm going to let our other co-hosts introduce themselves, and we're going to get started with this episode 1. So Jordan, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. No, so yeah, guys, my name is Jordan Bogart. I am super excited about this podcast. I think that there's such a need for conversation around faith in the world of cinema. And I think that, a lot of times we bury that part of us as filmmakers. And I think that this is a great platform and opportunity for us to open that conversation between us and ourselves, as well as a potential community out there who is longing to share that part of themselves with the world. So my hope for this is really that we all get to kind of share those parts of us and explore different mediums within the world of cinema and speak to some amazing guests. And I'm just super excited. Couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, my name is Garrett Marks, and I'm super excited to be doing this podcast with you guys. It's something we've been talking about and dreaming up for a while, and so it's cool to actually be here doing it. And I think all three of us really we're all friends. We've all known each other for a while, and just a lot of our conversations, like outside of this podcast, is really around film and storytelling and also our faith. Like our faith is a big part of our life and what that means to just intersect it all together. And so I think this is going to be a really cool podcast just to be able to share each other's journeys, our stories, our ups and downs. So I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of round out by saying, my name is George Coletrain, and I just kind of echo what these guys are saying. I think there's like that feeling whenever you're following an athlete or whatever, an entertainer, and then you find out that they like believe the same way that you believe, or they came from the same place you came from, or whatever the case is, and there's just like that immediate like, oh man, you feel so like emboldened, and you just feel like validated in so many different ways. And I just feel like, as if someone who grew up in the church, and someone who came into filmmaking, as like early in my 20s, I just feel like that didn't happen enough for me. Like I loved watching films. I loved watching about directors and writers and people who were DPing certain work. And I just want to be able to create more conversation and more just connection between people who, again, love film, love the process of making films, but also can share in the joys and in the frustrations of making films and being sometimes, and how that crosses with your faith and all this, the murkiness. And so just that community, I think, is a big part of a big inspiration for why we want to do this. Being able to meet people, being able to talk to other people who have done it and who have been in that space, and it just leaves you with a sense of validation and ultimately inspiration of like, okay, I can keep I'm not alone in this. I can keep doing this. And there's someone to look up to, or at least to learn from. And so that's something I'm really excited about in this podcast. And doing it with the two of you guys is going to be fun. So let's move along. Let's talk a little bit about, just for the three of us, just where, just who we are, where we came into film, and maybe even just some of the your journey and how you got to where you are now, and just talk about what you do, what you love to do, what's your favorite aspect of filmmaking, and then and your journey that's led you here. Jordan, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, no, thanks, George. For me, it's been an interesting journey. I started off as a musician, actually, so I didn't pursue film till later in life. I kind of dreamed about music. I majored in music in college. I had scholarship for music, that kind of path, right? And It was not until I started working for this little church in Louisiana where there was this youth pastor who was doing video announcements and, little testimony videos and weird, things for the youth, that kind of a thing, right? And I started just kind of making films with him. It was the first time my eyes kind of opened to this world, of filmmaking. And I, like you, George, I grew up, as a cinephile. I went to every single movie that came out in the theaters. My dad, brought me up listening to, sorry, my thing fell. Let me just start from right there. My dad brought me up, watching some of the oldies, right? Like he introduced me to all the John Wayne movies and things like that. And so I always had this like kind of interest in storytelling. And when I was introduced to filmmaking in this church, it just kind of opened my eyes to the world. And I started watching him do editing. I started seeing how stories and how videos were put together, through scenes and through, characters and things like that. And so I took it back with me to the next church I was working at, and I implemented that. I found a old, the DV tape Panasonic fixed lens camera, right? I was sitting behind backstage, and I just picked that up, and I started making films for the college ministry there on my free time, and was like, I can totally do this. And so I ended up creating just a position for myself there at the church, and they ended up hiring me full time as their film guy. So from there, it just kind of grew, and I taught myself, through YouTube. It was right at the boom of Vimeo and YouTube and all the, the teach yourself videos and all that kind of stuff, right? And so I just continued to grow and grow, and I guess I even grew my career, right? I went from I kind of went through different sizes of teams and different sizes of projects until I kind of landed within a larger church called Elevation Church, where it was the first time I had ever experienced a full actual team of filmmakers, and had access to tools that would give me the ability to actually create good images or things that I had been looking at, and had been following for a long time. And so with that, I grew exponentially, and kind of realized, man, there's so much more outside of this world of church cinema, right? There's so many more stories to be told and ways that we can tell it within pursuing, commercials and feature films and things like that within the freelance space. And so I eventually ended up making the decision to go full-time freelance, and the rest has been history. It's been amazing, just kind of getting to work with so many different people and pursue different stories and see my craft really start to form and blossom. So it's kind of been a really cool trajectory. But yeah, that's how it started, was music to film. Yeah.
And what type of work, real quickly, Jordan, currently right now, what type of work are you doing and ultimately pursuing?
Oh yeah. So for right now, I started off really kind of pursuing commercial work. And when I first started freelance, right. And honestly doing anything I could. And since then it's grown into narrative and long form. And so this last year I've made a transition into primarily doing long form content, where I'm shooting a television series, and I shot a feature film last year, pursuing more feature documentary work, things like that. So that's kind of where I'm living, but still taking on short form and brand kind of content as it comes. So
sure.
And where do you live?
I live in Greenville, South Carolina. So
nice.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. So Garrett and I, we're West Coasties, and Jordan is. Well, I think right now are you in LA right now?
I'm in LA next week.
Next week you're in LA. Okay. But so Jordan it's much later in the evening right now for Jordan is for us. But very cool. So you're in South Carolina, and then we're in San Diego. Garrett, why don't you jump in here, man? It's kind of the same question to you. How did you get started in film? Take us through your journey a little bit, and then ultimately like where you're at now and what you're pursuing in your filmmaking career.
Yeah. Man, I've loved film since I was a kid. I was a big Spielberg fan. So, I just grew up just watching movies, loving movies, just like you guys. And then I think as I got older, especially like as I became like a young adult, I would like watch certain movies that like really, really impacted me, and like really like I was kind of like the first time like I saw the ability like film can have on somebody's life. And so I think for me, like that's why film is really important, just because I've seen the impact it can have on others, and just for myself personally. And I started doing film when I was in high school. So I got the opportunity to like do like little like short films like on book reports and stuff like that. Instead of doing like a presentation, my teacher was like allowed me to do a film, and I just started making these like small films in my backyard, and fell in love with it. And like literally since like I was 15 or 16, like never turned back, and have always done film since then. And so, I started off more in the action sports world, doing stuff for like Red Bull and Quicksilver and Fuel TV and all that stuff back in the day. And we were doing stuff like commercial branded stuff, but also like long form episodic. And then over time, and I actually started more in the post-production, like motion graphics world, where I was overseeing that. So it was a kind of a journey, but my heart was always to direct and to shoot and to be on set. And so I made these intentional steps along the way to try to move out of post-production and move more into directing. And so I was fortunate to move more into the commercial space and working with brands. And that's currently what I'm doing, is I'm directing and DPing content for brands such as like Toyota, Hyundai, Wilson, Maybelline, just a bunch of different types of brands, from sports to tech to kind of everything in between. So that's good. And I think commercials has been really good, because just the ability to work, like you were saying, Jordan, just like on bigger sets with bigger crews, bigger budgets, it just kind of gives you the resources to try things and explore things that I wouldn't necessarily have been able to do otherwise without the funding to do it. So I've been really thankful for that experience. And currently I'm really pursuing narrative long form, and we're actually in development of like probably 4 to 5 feature films that we're doing right now. And so none of them have actually shot yet, but we're in development and trying to raise money and writing and all that jazz. So just trying to make that leap from commercials into narratives. So I'm excited about that. And
Yeah, very cool. I think like it's cool because we, the three of us, we have similar backgrounds to a degree, but then also very, very different ones. And also kind of where we ended up is a little bit different as well too. I think, I resonate a little bit with both of you in some of your stories. It's funny listening to Jordan's story, because mine's kind of the same. So I grew up, I grew up actually very sheltered as a kid. I didn't really get to see any movies or any of that kind of stuff until a little bit kind of like in my teenage years. But I remember when the first time I like saw like a movie, it's kind of like the Jurassic Park moment when he sees the dinosaurs and he's like, and it was like that. I remember just like for the first time getting to experience like a movie like in the theater, and it was like, it felt like the whole world opened up. And I didn't even really realize, as a kid, you're not like really always cognizant of what's going on. But I didn't realize, but in that moment, it was like, it felt like literally the whole world opened up. And so, I literally fell in love with movies. Like I can like tell you the moment I like fell in love with movies. sitting in a theater. And even at the beginning, like it wasn't even so much about the artistry, because I didn't, growing up where we grew up, there was really no opportunities to get into filmmaking or anything like that. For me, it was just entertainment. Like I loved Spielberg. Like I loved Jurassic Park. I love Star Wars. I mean, like the Jaws, like all that kind of stuff to me was just like the entertainment value, the ability to entertain people and make them feel something was incredible. And I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about, the artistry side of it, or the just the ability to make films, and so that didn't come to me till later, to actually in a church world as well. I was part of a young adult ministry. I was interning to do something totally different, and the pastor who kind of had like a lot of background in video, and he had he was really kind of just hip to YouTube and all that stuff, like put a camera in my hand and was like, dude, you're really good with music and you're really good with people, and like I think you would just be really good at video. And I was like, dude, I don't like, I had taken like one photography class in high school and hated it. I was like, dude, I barely even know how to turn the camera on. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And within like 2 weeks, I remember like staying up at the church till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm just like editing stuff, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. And I like, my first video plays in the church and it bombed, dude. Like I remember, that feeling when you're editing, like this is so sick. And then when it's in the room playing to people and you realize everyone thinks this video is terrible. And it was like, I remember being like, I don't care. Like I'll get better. I love this. And so, I got doused into the like art of making films and the art of cameras and all that stuff, like just in a church setting. It was actually a very, very large church, but it was a church that didn't have like a lot of focus on video. And so they kind of just like let me do whatever I wanted, especially within the college ministry. And again, I was kind of similar to Jordan. Like I was on YouTube, I was following people and learning stuff, and just like, just kind of just lost in this whole world. And I remember like having these moments with our like church, and they were like, we don't really even have a place for you. Like, what you want to do, I don't think we really can handle as a church. I was like, no, just give me a chance. I'm gonna make this really cool. And videos would play, and they'd be like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And I'm like, see, I'm telling you, like video can be in church. I promise it'll pan out, And so like just having this like unrelenting passion within kind of a church, environment, and a staff environment, and it opened doors to me. I eventually became full time at the church. I like created a staff of, I like basically would just like pick people out of like the high school ministry and be like, hey, I'm gonna give you a camera. You're gonna come with me on a shoot. Like I've seen some of your Instagram stuff or whatever. Like you seem like you're kind of hip. I'm gonna give you a camera now, and we're gonna and I like basically taught people from scratch how to do video, and like didn't realize it in the moment, but like created this whole department, and we were just making videos and doing stuff at that church that like no one knew was really possible. And again, in the moment, I didn't think I was like on this crazy career path. I was just in love with it. I was trying to, every day I was waking up thinking about how, like, what video can we make today? And so, eventually that grew, and continued to grow. And, I began to really seek out, okay, again, not just the entertainment side of video making, but the artistry, the craftsmanship, and the ability to tell stories. And what I really like and ended up falling in love with was telling stories. And so that's been my, it's crazy to say, but it's like 11 years since I started. And I feel like the first 8 years of my career was like in video making. And the last 3 years has become more into filmmaking, and just understanding even the difference between that and how that helps me tell different stories has been the first time I got on a set with like actual crew, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do with forever. Like I want to be here. Like I was a PA. I was, I don't think they paid me like $100 a day or whatever. And I was like, I'll come back tomorrow. Like, I don't care, And so like, that was it. Like, I just loved being on set. I loved watching how crews worked, and just like, again, how people tell stories. And so, yeah, ultimately that's where I've been at. It kind of landed these last few years has been really pursuing narrative work. I've been doing more short film work, but I really want to get into long form as well too. I'm even writing an episodic show, which is just, it's new to me. Like I'm not someone who has a very traditional route as far as within, the industry or whatever, but I just can't like not do it just out of a passion for it. So, again, from a church, having church as being a major part of my story, and all the kind of the things that come with that. But, working at a church for a long time, and then now being involved in meeting people and getting on film sets and crews and other stuff is, to me, is literally, it's a blessing. So, I think what would be cool for us to talk about, I know we've kind of maybe hit on it a little bit, but just maybe even just like a short nugget, like if I was even to ask, like, how to define filmmaking to you, and or like how to define it and what you love about it, like what do you love about filmmaking, what makes you continue to pursue after this, not just as a career but as a passion. I know some of you guys talked about what got you into it, but what even like today keeps you passionate about filmmaking? What do you love about it? Garrett, let's start with you this time. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna throw in.
Go ahead.
I think that it's such an interesting question. You know, I was just thinking about that. Like, I think we're all now kind of moving into this narrative world of movies and things that we love, right? And it's such an interesting time where content has just exploded, where anybody is a content maker, right?
Yes.
And there's guys who have no grid for making films or movies, right? They don't want to be in that world. They're just like, I'm fine with making YouTube videos, or I'm fine with being, doing commercials or corporate videos or whatever, that kind of thing, right? And it's like, it's interesting to kind of see how the three of us have this deep love and passion for pursuing long form narrative movie, content, right? Like, television content and whatever that is, right? That long form storytelling. It's interesting to me. I've been kind of just trying to dissect, why is that? What's that love? I think for me, like, it honestly, like, there's something about making films for an audience. And that's the biggest thing I think that I've missed from working at a church was you work so hard for months sometimes, right? Like on this one video for Easter, or this one thing that we're trying to do, this story, this testimony video. And then a lot of times there's one moment that it gets to get played, right? Which is the Sunday that it's going to air. But it's getting played for a live audience. And most times I would be sitting in the crowd looking around, right? Like trying to gauge how people are reacting. Am I getting people to, are people crying at this moment? Is someone going to laugh at this moment? And just to see a group of people be impacted by a story that I put together and told, I think was magical. And that's something that, like, for me, I think it's really rooted in why I want to pursue this craft of telling long form, stories, like within, or just even narrative based stories, right? Like, I don't want to sell something. I don't want to, do some kitschy kind of vlog or something, right? Like, I want to be able to make a story that's going to impact people. And Garrett, you talked about having, movies that literally changed your life, right? Like that changed the way that you thought. We all have those movies, like those tent poles, right? That when we saw that, I was like, whoa, I've never thought about the world that way. And I think that's what I want to be a part of, right? And I think that's what we all see the value in movie making is it's combining all the arts, all of the the different crafts together to try to tell this grand, huge story that I feel like it's the best opportunity we have on this earth to actually change someone's mind, right? To implant an idea, or to help them to see something differently. And that's obviously on the deeper side. I mean, there's other ways, like, right, of just making someone laugh and feel joy, right? Or giving someone 2 hours of entertainment where they're a spectacle, right? I think there's so many applications to it, but that's the passion. That's where it comes from me, was those experiences, I think,
For sure.
That's good. Yeah, I think what you were saying, I think one of the big things for me is the craft of film, like being able to intertwine so many different artistries when it comes to cinematographers, production designers, actors, music composers. It's like visual effects. Like you have so many um, different things, and you're bringing it all into one medium. And like it's really special, and I think it's really challenging too. It's like and that's what I like about film is like I really enjoy doing commercial work, but a lot of times you can hide mistakes sometimes in a commercial by just doing like montage or whatever. But when you're doing a narrative, it's like being able to have dialogue, and it's like if you miss a scene, it's like what do you cut to, you know? And so I think the challenge of it is really rewarding to do that. Um, and yeah, I think just working with people, like people on set, like I just love the people I get to be surrounded with, and all the different people I get to meet each time when I'm on set, from the gaffers to PAs to producers to the talent. Um, yeah, we're blessed that we get to go to all these different places in the world and film these things and meet all these different people. And it really, I think having like one vision and coming together to make that vision is really special. And then just being able to hear other people's story and getting to know them. Um, so, so I think that's one of the big things I love about film.
Yeah.
Garrett, do you feel like have you ever experienced that where you've played your film in front of an audience and gotten to feel that like reaction coming from commercials?
Yeah, I have a little bit. Like we did a short film called Behind Greatness, and we got to do the film festival circuit. And then for commercials, it's like awesome when you're like, I'll be like in like a dinner, like a restaurant or like a bar, and I literally see our commercial we made on TV, and you're like, oh wow, this is actually like reaching people all over the place, because a lot of times we're on our computers, yes, editing, getting these things done, sending deliverables, and it feels very like individualistic. And so even though we have a team working together, it's like it feels like such a small scale. But then when you actually get to see it out and see people watching this like around the nation or even the world, it's like a really that's really it's a really good experience to be able to do that. So I think, like you guys said, with narrative film, that would be amazing, just to be able to sit in and like watch with the audience and have people watch your movie. So even I was going to say with Behind Greatness, we did this basketball drama film around a father-son, and we were in the LA International Film Festival, and I was sitting in the theater, and we just heard like people next to us like crying like loudly. And I was like, and you just felt like no joke, like you felt like the Holy Spirit's present fill that space. Like something shifted in that theater where it was like you can just feel God really, and just you could feel what was going, like whatever was being embodied through the film, like you could feel it in that theater. So that was a really cool moment to experience what I made like impact other people. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's like you feel like I feel like so much of the content we make now, right, it just gets put up on a website or blasted on YouTube or played on Instagram, right? And it's like it's gone in 2 seconds. Gone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that's the thing that I feel about like movies. If it's good and if it's accepted by an audience, it can last for decades. And it's just like it's something that can become a staple. And and then on the more spiritual side of what you're saying, Garrett, like there's something about being a Christian and putting that spirit of God in your film, right? Like and basically, when we're writing, when we're creating these experiences, a lot of times I feel like we're infusing that DNA of the creator within that. And so it's just amazing that something that we can create, with God can actually, impact people on that level. And that's with anything, I mean, I think that people who aren't necessarily Christians, right? Like what they're making are still can impact people with what they put into it,
Yeah. And to your point, I think most of the movies that have actually impacted my life were not Christian films.
No.
Like they, not at all, but they just, the message and, just really impacted me. So,
Yeah, it's great. I think it's so funny that, just hearing the two of you talk, it just reaffirms so much of the things that are in my own soul about what I, love about filmmaking and creating. And, I remember the first time seeing Star Wars. And again, I was late to a lot of this stuff. It wasn't, it was a little bit later than most people were, but I remember
was it the first Star Wars or
no?
The
So
new
I
Star
saw,
Wars?
okay, this is throw people some off, but my first one I ever saw was episode 2, The Attack of the Clones, which is completely way, good. But even still,
Misa Jaja.
It was but I remember laying in bed almost all night, couldn't sleep of whoa, you could create literally a universe. And so just the impact that you can have on people. And again, to go back to a lot of what things you guys said, I've been in movies, I've watched movies and films where I've cried and it's made me, face some things in my life, like a deep emotional, wounds or joys or whatever the case is. And films can really move people in just incredible ways. I mean, I don't want to sound so biased, but I just feel better than anything can. I think films just move people in such incredible ways. And so I just love being a part of that. I love, again, I've been a lot of part of certain stuff where it's kind of a marketing focus or, trying to sell stuff, or even getting in the church world where it's you're trying to get people to come to an event or whatever the case is. That stuff's great. But I think when you're getting to tell a story, when you're getting to try to communicate something from your brain and your heart, or the writer's brains, the writer's heart, whomever it is, you're trying to communicate that across time and space to people that might not even see it for years down the road or whatever the case is, but you're trying to communicate something that just takes so much. It just means so much. And I think I got to direct and write a short film a couple years ago. And I put so much of myself into it, and it feels whenever I watch it, it's I feel I can see parts of myself in that film, even if it was just for that that season of my life. There's an element of myself and the people that was kind of helped me write it. There's so much of personality and your soul. And it's kind of, imagine something like a musician, right? There's a song, but there's also what they're trying to communicate, even deeper levels through, obviously you're trying to create a song that's catchy or whatever. And same thing with the film, you're trying to create something that's entertaining. But when you really get into narrative and filmmaking, there's a transfer of just energy and transfer of your soul, and ultimately kind of go back to what Garrett said, of the spirit. And as a person of faith, you're also hoping that people get to see more of God and get to see more of who God sees in them, or just again validate where they're at. It's just there's just nothing to me. There's nothing else like that. Again, there's a lot of great art forms that are amazing, and I don't want to again sound too biased, but I just think that film has something so special, and it keeps people awake at night. It makes people cry, makes people laugh, makes people want to seek out old relationships and seek forgiveness. It makes people want to change their whole scope of their lives. It has such an impact. And when you get to do that, when you get to be on the other side of creating that from the beginning to the end, to seeing it on a screen, to see people react to it, the reaction is visceral. It's so cool. It's so cool. And so, yeah, it's kind of funny that I feel like I'm reiterating the same things that you guys are saying, but yeah, it is so, consistent, I think, for a lot of filmmakers who are telling stories, and not maybe just even outside of the kind of commercial space. When you get into telling stories, I think that a lot of people kind of feel that connection to the audience when they're trying to tell something from their heart or from their spirit.
But yeah, I think you said it earlier too. It's when you actually make like narrative film, it's addicting. Like you
Yes.
make it, and I think it's just the challenge of it because it's hard.
It's so
It's
hard.
hard to do it and to do it well.
It's vulnerable.
So it's kind of like, yeah, it's being vulnerable, and so there's something that's I don't know if the word's addicting, but I think it's just the joy of being like the accomplishment of being able to make this thing and piece it together, and it's pretty rewarding. So
I think the cycle of like, again, being on set, whether it's 3 days or 21 days or 3 months, like the grind, the pressure, the like back and forth with the crew, and then but then to see it at the end, I feel like you get to experience kind of the width of like human emotion and human, problem. I mean, it's the common phrase, like filmmaking is just problem solving, right? You get to see problem solving, you get to see growth even within the crew and obviously the actors and all performances and stuff. Like you just get to experience so much, and then to see it on the again on the presentation side, whether you're in the film or whether it's on screen or whatever, like. That it is addicting. It is addicting. Like there's I would say there's very few things. Like I think it's part of the creating part of it. Like I think if we can get into the whole like spiritual side, like the first thing that God does is He creates from nothing. And I think there's a level of us that loves that, and that comes in different forms. Some people may not be like artistic. It might be they're creating in a business sense, or they're creating their families or whatever the case is. But I think for us who have an artistic like bend, like you feel so close to God because you get to do something that He does, create something from nothing into something that is powerful. And like that, yeah, it 100% is addicting. Like, I don't know how someone like does that, goes on set, part of a crew, whatever, and like walks away and goes, nah, I'm good. Like, I'm just like, how? Like, like I mean, unless you have a terrible experience. I mean, I'm sure I know people who are like, yeah, I'm sure people are like, nah, dude, my experience sucked. But
I mean, it is hard. It is hard though. So it's like some people, I mean, you're working 10 to 14-hour days. Some people don't want to do that.
For sure.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say too, I think it's interesting just listening to the conversation so far, if it, for us, it's been kind of this back and forth of like, who do we want this podcast to be for? Right. Like I think we've all kind of said, our part of we're people of faith, right? We're people, who are, pursuing making stories, as Christians, not that we're always going to tell Christian stories, but that we value that. So I think it'd be good to kind of just let the audience know what we're hoping for this podcast, right, and what they're going to experience kind of moving forward. As far as like how they're going to get into it, because I think it's always that balance of like, well, do we want to offend someone, or do we want to have this open for everyone to be able to watch, or and I think it will be, but just up front that part of who we are is going to be part of this.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead, Garrett.
I was going to say, I think one of the first we kind of like listed out pillars of like what we want this podcast to really do, and really just to give to our audience. And I think one of the big thing is just to empower people to understand the power of story and the like what they're actually making and writing and putting their energy towards, like how that can really affect people, because just like what comes out of your mouth, it can be good or bad. It's like you can do the same with film. It's like you see a lot of films that, and I'm not going to bash any film, because I think film, it's all people's perception and their own experiences. But film can either have a negative, like you can leave a film feeling like really crappy after watching, or you can actually feel uplifted. And it doesn't have to mean it's like this sobbing drama. It could be a comedy, or it could be an adventure or a fantasy. But I think just empowering our audience to understand, the power behind what they're doing with their craft, and not just because, I think there's the ability of just creating and all that, but it's like pushing into it more of like how this can actually impact people. So,
yeah, that's great. Totally. I love that. Yeah, and I think kind of real quickly, super quickly, I'll say here, kind of what to what Jordan was saying is, yeah, I mean, again, I came from church world, but I'm doing a lot more freelance over the last few years, and I end up on sets, I end up on a lot of sets that aren't, where I might be the only believer, and so, and I'm fine with that. I'm so cool with it, like, yeah, I know sometimes if you're someone from a faith, but especially a church background, there can be that tension there, but I think what I've learned to live in, and I think kind of resonates with this podcast as well, is that like I'm going to be unapologetic about my faith and who I am. But again, whenever I'm on a film set, I'm cool talking with everyone, and we have a great time. I've met so many great people and have friends with people that you would think like, oh, how could you? And it's like, dude, no, like, especially when you are in the trenches of 12-hour days and you're falling asleep on each other and you're, trying to get the last shot and making it happen. And it's like, those connections are built. And so I think there's a common thread of your love for film. And so we can connect and rally around that. And again, I think if anyone interacts with me or sees me online or sees me in person after a pretty short amount of time, it's going to be clear that like, faith is important to me. But to me, that's not an exclusive thing. That's not something that, I use to push people away. I want to use it to pull people in. And anything in my life, I have people who love sports, who talk about Lakers and they're not believers. People who we talk about, whatever and food, our love for food. But it's fine. And the same thing with film. Like, if you love film, look, we can have a great conversation. Like, it's going to be easy for me to have that conversation with you but everything I do, I will have a breath of faith and that'll bleed its way out here as well. But yeah, for those who love film, let's talk about film, and I'm cool with that.
No, totally, man. I think that like a lot of this too is, we're all just trying to navigate how to be people of faith in this world of filmmaking, right? Because it feels like Hollywood is, I'm not going to say devoid of that or anything like that, but it feels like it's hard to be to hold beliefs and to hold morals within the structure that's been created, right? And so I think my vision for this and Garrett and George, like our vision is to like really just create a space where we can explore this, right, and hear from others who believe in the same way, right, and to hear their experiences of how they're dealing with navigating through all of these things that we feel are in between, right? That's kind of why we named it what it is, right? And so I think that's going to be a huge thing for us. We're not here to view a message. We're not here to try to convert someone. We're just trying to create a space. Yeah. I think where people can just listen and be. And I think if even if you are not of faith, right? Like, this is a space just to get you to understand and to think, right? I think if we come from a place of understanding first, then we can actually connect with other people. And so I think that's one of the biggest goals is like, we're going to be bringing on guests. We're going to try to find people in the industry who are working at high levels, working on films that we love, that we might not have known are actually Christians, right? Or people of faith, and hearing their stories of how they navigate through things, how they view movie making and filmmaking. Because of this question, we I think up to this point, we've only seen one flavor of Christian film that's been made of Christians in the film industry, right? And they're amazing. I think that like what we've been able to accomplish up to this point is awesome, but I think that there's this wide world of other people and other filmmakers who are Christians who are doing this, who see things in a different way. And I think this is such an amazing opportunity for us to kind of open up that conversation. That's good. To really explore, what does this look like? How do we navigate through this? What kind of stories do we tell? How do we, be who we are and not compromise that, but still be part of these amazing projects and these movies that we all love and want to be a part of. So totally. I think that's going to be a huge thing that we explore on this podcast.
That's good. And I you go ahead, Garrett.
Oh, I was just going to add on to that. I think amongst that, I think just learning that, I think just out of it, there's just going to be like technical things that we're going to learn in the process, because I mean, we're all constantly learning, and just to learn from people who've been in the industry and experienced working at all different levels, just, learning just the technical things. And I think those are just going to naturally come about in all the conversations as well.
Totally. Yeah, and I think like this would be great, kind of to almost kind of start to land the plane here and talk through. Again, obviously, this will maybe morph over time, but just as we're seeing the podcast and how it starts, I know we touched on it a little bit right there. We're talking about for sure bringing guests on, having a strong guest kind of culture on this podcast. But what are some other things that people can expect from us, from this podcast, going forward? And we don't have to get like crazy specific about it, but just kind of touch points of things that are important to us and what we want to try to communicate in this podcast, and how we're hoping to do it, in this iteration of the podcast.
Jordan, you want to talk about the kind of exploring theology and ideology in film?
Yeah, totally. So I think for anybody who watches a film, we all walk away with something, right? Like we all are either walking out of the theater and are like, that was awesome, or man, that was off. There's something weird about that. That was okay, right? There's always like some sort of reaction on just that base level, right? That we all think of. And then when we start to think about these films deeper, and we start to unpack them with our friends and our family and with, our coworkers, we start to kind of think, well, I actually think he was saying this, right? Or I think when he went down to the river and, left his, his necklace down there, I think he was saying that he was actually leaving behind his past, or, what I mean? We all have these, interpretations of what the film is. And I think the best films that we've all seen have that subtlety, right? They have that undertone of what they're trying to say within their art form. There's that high level of entertainment and quality of, is this good? Is this not? And then there's that subtext of where that's at. And then you get, movies on either side that are just their propaganda for what they're trying to say, right? Like whether or not, you're going and seeing a movie that's supposed to be an action movie, but you come out and it's like, that was all about global warming or whatever, right? Or like you go to see a Christian movie and it's like, oh man, that hit me over the head. I think that there's, when you're message focused versus art focused, I think that's something we want to explore, right? And then just looking at some of our favorite films and talking about that, I think that'd be something really cool to really kind of unpack, and especially even with some of our guests, like if we are able to get on some people who we have on our list, I think that there's going to be some amazing conversations and amazing movies that have impacted us that we can kind of unpack with these creators. So that's the hope, is that we get to kind of go beyond just talking about technical things or just hearing backstories, but really dive into some of these concepts, and then exploring like how do we, what kind of, I don't know, like we have this list of all these other themes and ideas of topics that we want to explore on how to make films, right? And how we want to make films as a collective, right? How Jordan wants to make films, how Garrett wants to make films, how George wants to make films, and how do we incorporate some of these themes in what we're trying to do as people of faith. And so it's this in-between gray kind of thing that we're all figuring out. I'm going to go on this journey together, with hopefully a community of other people. So.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that leads us kind of into like one of the last pillars is just creating a community. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is really being able to just create this community and around film, around faith, around just everything. But I think being in the film industry and even especially being kind of believer in the film industry, it can feel very lonely and isolating sometimes. And I've had a lot of friends who've actually didn't want to be in the film industry because they didn't think they could kind of hold on to their faith and actually be in this industry or hold on to their morals or whatever that was. And I think just a podcast where people feel like they can be seen, where they can feel like they can be heard, and where we can all just learn together. I think that's really important. So we want this to be bigger than just the three of us and and the people we interview. We want this to be a thing where people really come together and are inspired together and can really journey this, do this journey of film together as like one unit. So yeah.
Yeah. To that point too, I think
That's
it's
great.
like, yeah, that was one of the biggest revelations I ever had as a filmmaker, right? Was I'm better with others.
Yeah.
Right. Like this idea, I remember the first time I actually got to work with a team, and
Yeah.
I up to that point I was either a 1-man or 2-man team, right? That kind of a thing where you're lighting, you're doing audio, you're doing the filming, and then running over and clicking play, and then coming back and doing it. It's just like everyone knows how that is, right?
Yeah.
But the first time I worked together with a team, I remember seeing the quality of my work, the experience of what I was doing jump so high exponentially that it was like, I don't ever want to do film again by myself.
Yes.
Obviously we all have to take that, right? We all have
Sure.
to do that at times, with different projects. But I think the power of film is the community, and it is the, people collaborating. It's the collaboration of minds creating something bigger than ourselves. And so in this too, right, that community, I feel like if we can start to contribute something to the community at large, that's going to be awesome. But if also the community can start to contribute to each other, and we start to build something that creates a wave of conversation and a wave of ideas and just collaboration between filmmakers of faith and filmmakers in general, right? Like I feel like that's a huge point of this podcast is to try to create something that's going to create unity, I think, in the film industry.
Yeah, it's great. I think again, it's kind of almost bring that down to a concise point. Like I think things that we're excited about for this podcast is empowering people, educating, learning, exploring. Exploring film in the theology, ideology of it, and exploring what it means to be someone of faith and in the film industry, and then ultimately to create community around all those subjects together. And so, it's something, again, this is something we're excited about. This is something that we want to, like, this is something that I know I wish I had coming up. And so it's kind of fun to be on the side of creating it. And we're hoping that you all who are, listening and watching, that you are finding it to be a blessing to your life, to be educational, to be something that is useful for you, and inspiring and empowering you. And so, again, a big part of the community is letting us know. We would love to get connected with you guys and make sure you're not just following us for numbers' sake, but we want to get to know people even early in this idea, this podcast. We talked about having people like live viewers, not live viewers, but having people be able to watch these live as they happen, because we want to be able to interact with you guys and get to know you guys and answer questions that you guys have for our guests or for ourselves, all that different stuff. So the community part of this is huge. And we're really looking forward to just getting to know other people who have different experiences, have different skill sets, and we can all grow for one another. We're not experts. We're just people who love it. We're passionate about it, and we want to get connected with other people. Garrett might be an expert, but the rest of us, we're just hanging out, dude. We're just
oh.
Like one zinger per show. I had to keep you on your toes. I want to see if you're still awake there. I should have checked if Jordan's awake, because he's the one it's like got to be close to midnight where he's at. Yeah. But again, that was just it for episode 1. This episode 1 to be probably most different than all the others. This is just, again, our kind of introduction to each other and to one another. You get to see who we are, get to meet us a little bit. You'll get to see more of that as the episodes roll out and things of that nature, and kind of hear some of our stories and things of that nature. But we want to use this first just kind of meeting to, again, kind of set the stage and set expectations for this podcast going forward. And we really have goals that the most of, if not all of the stuff going forward, will not just be our voices, but be other people's voices in the film industry that we look up to and respect, or you guys look up to and respect, and getting to hear from them. And you're not just hearing our voices, again, because we're not necessarily experts, but we want to be able just to talk to the people who have different experiences and have just a lot to offer and a lot to share. And so yeah, this episode will be a little bit different than most others, but we're excited to continue on with you guys and connect going forward. So make sure you follow us, subscribe to us, all the stuff. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you know what to do. You guys know what to do. We believe in you. You guys are smart. You guys are filmmakers. You guys are brilliant. So you guys can figure it out. But yeah, anything you guys want to say on the wrap out here? That's what we should call the end. We should wrap out, huh? Company
there
move.
it is.
Wrap out. That's
should we do that's a wrap?
That's a wrap. This is martini shot. What do you have for your martini shot? Martini shot, Garrett.
Ourselves.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share before we end it?
Oh no, I'm just super excited to be a part of this with you guys, and yeah, I'm pumped.
Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, no, I am pumped as well.
I love that.
Trying to pump it. I've been working out,
so
I'm trying to pump it up.
There you go.
We all play basketball together too. Or I play basketball. I played basketball with Jordan, and I play basketball with George.
Yeah, one day.
That's another common interest.
We'll get it for sure. Well, thanks so much for listening and watching. And we'll see you guys next episode. I don't know when the next episode will come, but we'll see you on the next episode for the Film and In Between podcast.